The sandstorm was loud enough to swallow engines. A human driver named Mason kept his cargo truck moving because stopping out here meant dying. The desert on Karos 9 did not forgive mistakes. Sand could bury metal like it was soft cloth, and its wind could cut skin through fabric. Mason had driven this route 100 times for the human mining camp. But tonight the storm felt different, thicker, heavier, like it carried a warning. His headlights stabbed through the orange haze. Then, the light hit something white. Mason blinked hard, thinking it was a trick of dust. White was rare in this land. Almost nothing stayed clean and nothing stayed bright. But the shape did not move like drifting trash. It sat still, small and hunched, right in the open like it wanted to be seen. He eased off the gas. The truck slowed, tires crunching sand. The shape lifted its head. Not metal, not rock, a hatchling, a dragon hatchling. Mason's breath caught in his throat. He had seen alien dragons from far away, huge armored bodies in the sky, part of the local empire that claimed these worlds. But this one was small, no bigger than a large dog. Its scales were pale as moon salt. Albino, the kind people whispered about in the camps. Like a bad omen, the hatchling did not run. It did not hiss. It only stared at him with wide eyes that looked too tired for something so young and high above. Hidden inside the storm, something moved just for a second, like a dark crossing the clouds. Mason felt it more than he saw it, a cold pressure on the back of his neck, like he was being measured. He pulled the truck to a stop anyway. "Don't be stupid," he told himself, his voice small inside the cab. "This isn't your problem." But his hands were already moving. He grabbed a mask, pulled it tight, and stepped down into the wind. The storm slapped him instantly. Sand hit his visor like rain made of glass. He hunched forward and walked toward the hatchling, keeping his movements slow, up close. He saw how bad it was. The hatchling's wings were folded tight, trembling. Its belly was pressed to the sand, like it had been sitting there for hours. Around it, the surface was strangely smooth, but no tracks, no marks. As if someone had placed it down and then walked away without leaving anything behind. Mason crouched. Keeping a safe distance? "Hey," he said, soft as he could. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The hatchling's head dipped, then lifted again, as if it was choosing to believe him more simply had no other choice. Mason noticed its throat move, dry swallowing with no water to swallow. He reached into his belt pouch and pulled out a small water pack. He squeezed a little onto the sand, far enough that the hatchling wouldn't feel trapped. The wind tried to steal it, but the hatchling crawled forward fast, tongue flicking out, drinking like it had forgotten what water felt like. Mason's chest tightened. That was not a wild creature acting proud. That was something left to die. As the hatchling drank, something glimmered near its side. Mason leaned closer and saw a broken piece of eggshell half buried in sand. The shell was pale too, but on it, burned in dark lines, was a symbol, not human, not simple. A mark that looked official, a brand. "Rejected," Mason whispered. The hatchling paused, as if it understood the word, and its eyes flicked toward him again. In that stare, Mason saw fear, but also something else. Waiting. A quiet, stubborn hope that made his throat sting. The storm shifted for half a second, and the world opened just enough for Mason to see up. Far above, in a gap of cloud, a tiny light blinked once, then vanished. Drone? A scanner? Mason stood quickly. Nope. We're not doing this out here." Low. He unhooked a spare thermal blanket from the truck's side compartment, shook sand off it, and crouched again. "Come on, little one. I can't leave you." The hatchling flinched when the blanket touched its scales. Then it froze, confused, and finally relaxed a little when the warmth settled over its body. It let out a sound, barely a breath like. A broken squeak. Mason lifted it carefully. It was lighter than he expected, bone sharp under thin muscle. Carried it back to the truck, shielding it with his own body against the wind. The moment he opened the cab door, the radio crackled. Not words, a tone. A thin, sharp pulse that made Mason's teeth ache. He slapped the radio off. The tone continued for one more heartbeat anyway. Like something was still connected, even without permission. Mason stared at the silent radio, then at the hatchling in his arms. The hatchling's eyes were half closed now, exhaustion winning, but its ears twitched at the sound like it recognized it. "No," Mason muttered. "No, no, no." He set the hatchling on the passenger seat and pulled an old jacket over it, leaving space to breathe. "Stay down, please." Then he drove. The truck pushed through the storm, engine steady, lights cutting a narrow tunnel in the dust. Mason kept checking his mirrors. At first there was nothing but sand. Then, far behind, a faint flicker. A light that wasn't from his truck. It blinked once. Then again like a patient eye. Mason's hands tightened on the wheel. He tried to tell himself it was a reflection. A storm trick. Anything. But deep down he knew better. Someone had been watching that hatchling in the desert. Someone had left it there, branded and alone. Expected the desert to finish the job. Now, the hatchling was in his cab, and whoever owned that brand would not like that. Mason glanced at the small lump under the jacket, the hatchling's chest. Rose and fell in shallow breaths. Trusting him in a way that felt too heavy for a stranger, he swallowed hard and kept driving. He did not know it yet. But the moment he picked the albino hatchling up, someone far away marked him as a target. Asterisk, the storm chased Mason like it wanted him gone. Sand hammered the windshield. The truck's headlights made a thin tunnel, and everything outside it was moving dust. Mason kept both hands on the wheel, but his eyes kept sliding to the passenger seat. Under the jacket, the albino hatchling shifted. "It's okay," Mason said. "Stay low." The radio was off, yet the cab still felt wrong. Every few minutes he thought he heard that sharp pulse again, like a sound stuck inside the speakers. Then the side mirror blinked. A light behind him, too steady to be storm glare. Mason's stomach tightened. He pressed the accelerator. The truck rumbled faster, tires digging into loose sand. Another blink appeared, closer now, matching his speed. "They're following," he muttered. The hatchling's snout slid out for air. In the dashboard glow, its scales looked almost silver. Its wide eyes watched Mason, then the windshield, as if it understood danger without words. Mason turned the cabin heat higher. The hatchling stopped, shaking for a second. Then the radio crackled without. Power. A single pulse. Clean and sharp. Mason froze. How? The hatchling's throat moved. A tiny light flared under its jaw, and the pulse sounded again. Faint, but real. Mason stared. The hatchling was making the sound. It stopped as quickly, as it started, like it had not meant to do it. The hatchling blinked, scared of itself. Mason took the next turn off the main route, steering toward a rocky service ridge. Tall stone slabs rose out of the sand like broken walls. If he could hide for 1 minute, maybe he could break the line of sight. The engine groaned as he climbed. Between the rocks, the storm thinned. Mason cut the lights and rolled behind a slab. He stopped and held his breath. A smooth hum threaded through the wind. Too even to be natural. However, Mason peeked through the side window. A dark shape slid above the ridgeline, flat and fast. Drone. A narrow beam swept the rocks, cutting through dust. Mason ducked down. The beam passed once, then again slower. The hatchling made a tiny squeak. Mason looked down. The hatchling's eyes were locked on its own foreleg. Under the pale scales, faint lines glowed, forming the same symbol Mason had seen burned into the broken eggshell. A mark. A tracker. The hatchling tried to rub its leg against the seat, like it hurt. Mason's jaw clenched. Someone had branded a baby-like cargo. He opened the glove box and pulled out a compact scanner from his medkit. He switched it on low. The screen showed a weak signal source right where the symbol glowed. "That's how they find you, Mason," whispered. Outside, the beam returned and paused. Lingering near their rock slab, Mason did not breathe. Then the hatchling made a different sound, Lower steady. Not the pulse. It's more like a soft hum. The glowing lines dimmed. On the scanner, the signal dropped, wavered, then almost vanished. Outside, the drone's beam swept faster, confused, searching for a target that was fading. Mason stared at the hatchling. You can hide it. The hatchling's eyes met his. Fear was still there, but so was effort-like. It was pushing against an invisible leash. The drone drifted away. The hover hum faded into the storm. Mason finally exhaled, hands shaking. Good job. He turned the truck lights on again low and eased back onto the ridge path. They could not stay. A drone could return with friends. He aimed the truck toward the human outpost, still far away. A sharp ping sounded from the dashboard. External scan detected. Mason felt the hairs rise again. Mason's blood ran cold. The warning icon flashed again. He looked up. Through the storm, a massive shadow lowered out of the clouds, blocking what little light the world had left. Not a drone, a ship. Silent and heavy, like a falling mountain. The hatchling lifted its head, the radio still powered off. Suddenly spoke a single word in a language Mason did not know. The hatchling did it, answered with a trembling sound like a name. Mason gripped the wheel as bright lights turned toward the truck. They had found him again. The ship's lights pinned the truck like a spotlight on a stage. Mason did not stop. He drove straight ahead, jaw tight, eyes burning from sand. The hatchling sat upright now, blanket sliding off its shoulders. Its pale scales caught the cabin, glow, and the symbol on its foreleg pulsed once. "Stay down," Mason said, but his voice came out rough. Outside, the storm thinned. Ship hovered above the ridge, smooth and silent, matching his path. It did not fire, did not speak. It simply watched. Mason turned on the emergency beacon for the human camp. A red light blinked on the dash. He pushed the truck faster, ignoring the engine's protest. The outpost was a small set of domes and towers built into rock, protected by a fence and a short-range shield. It was not a fortress, but it was human. The first guard post appeared like a ghost in the dust. A voice snapped over the comm line. "Unknown vehicle. Identify. Mason Hale. Supply run." Mason shouted into the mic. "Open the gate. I'm being tracked." There was a pause. Then the fence lights flared. The gate slid apart. Mason rushed through and slammed the brakes. The truck skidded, then stopped. Two security workers ran out in sealed suits, weapons lowered but ready. Behind them, the outpost's anti-drone net rose like a faint blue grid. The ship above the ridge slowed. It did not cross the boundary. It hovered there, just outside the net, as if it respected a rule Mason did not understand. The guards reached the cab window. "Hale, what did you do?" one demanded. Mason lifted the jacket. The hatchling blinked at them, small and white as snow. Both guards froze. "Yes," Mason said, "and it was left to die." They waved him forward at Med Bay. Now, inside the outpost, the air smelled like filters and warm plastic. Mason carried the hatchling through the main corridor, while people stared from doorways. Hatchling pressed closer to his chest, claws gripping his sleeve gently. Like it was afraid the lights would steal it, Dr. Reyes met them at the Med Bay door. "Put it on the table," she ordered. Mason hesitated. Hatchling tensed. "It's safe," Mason promised, then lowered it onto a padded surface. The hatchling stayed still, eyes locked on him. Reyes scanned the foreleg. The symbol flickered under her device. "That's a locator tag," she said. "Alien grade." Mason's fists clenched. "Can you remove it?" "Not here," Reyes answered. "We cut wrong. It could trigger a distress burst." She glanced at the hatchling's white scales and shook her head. "Albino, I haven't seen one in any report that wasn't marked restricted." Mason frowned. "Why would a color be restricted?" "'Cause it's not just color," Reyes said quietly. "It could be a bloodline, or a defect they fear, or something political." She looked at the monitors. "Someone out there thinks this hatchling belongs to them." As if on cue, the outpost comms chimed. A warning banner flashed across. The wall screen. Incoming external transmission, non-human authority. Security Chief Patel appeared on the monitor, breathing hard. "They're hailing us," he said. "Official channel, Dragon Empire." Mason's stomach dropped. The screen switched. An alien face filled it long, scaled, armored, with eyes like cold glass. The voice that followed was translated into flat English. "Human facility," it said. "You are in possession of Imperial property. Return the albino hatchling immediately. Do not interfere." Mason stepped forward. "It's alive," he said. "That's not property." The alien's eyes did not blink. "It was rejected. It is unfit. Your involvement is unacceptable." Behind Mason, the hatchling made a soft hum, and the locator symbol dimmed again, like it was trying to disappear. Patel's voice came through. Tense. "We are a civilian outpost. We will not hand over a living child." The alien tilted its head. "Then do not make this place a battlefield." A second later, every light in the med bay flickered. The monitor stuttered. Then the power cut out completely. The outpost fell into darkness. In the dark, a deep humming rolled through the walls. And the hatchling's eyes opened, glowing. Faintly, asterisk, the outpost went dark. Red emergency lights slid on along the floor. And a deep hum rolled through the walls. Mason stood beside the exam table. It stared upward, as if it could feel the ship beyond the ridge. Dr. Reyes checked her handheld scanner and frowned. "That wasn't our power system," she said. "It was an outside pulse." A radio on her belt crackled. Chief Patel's voice came through, clipped and hard. "Lockdown, all sections. Shield is unstable." Heavy doors thudded shut down the corridor. Reyes tapped the scanner again. The screen flickered. "They're jamming us," she muttered. The hatchling made a low hum. The symbol on its foreleg dimmed, like a light being covered. Claw against the mark, rubbing as if it burned. "Can you remove it?" Mason asked. "Not safely," Reyes said. "But it can damp the signal." The scanner's warning bar dropped. Outside the walls, the hum shifted, searching. A sudden flash ran across the dead monitors. For half a second, alien characters appeared, then vanished. Reyes stared. "It just touched our network," she whispered. Mason looked at the hatchling. The small creature blinked at him, afraid and exhausted, but trying. The door opened. Patel stormed in with 2 security guards. "Hail," Patel said. "You dragged an Imperial ship to a civilian outpost." Mason did not step back. "I found it in the desert, branded, left to die." Patel's eyes flicked to the hatchling and away again. "We can shut down our shield," he said. "If the shield fails, the storm gets in. Our air scrubbers are on backup already." The wall panel, a battery icon blinked. 18%. Reyes lifted her scanner. "Chief, it's tagged, yes, but it can hide the tag." "It's doing it now," one guard snapped, "so it's broadcasting." "It's surviving," Reyes shot back. A security camera feed popped up on a small screen. Through sand and distance, the Imperial ship hovered just outside the outpost's net, waiting. It did not cross the line. It did not need to. The corridor speakers hissed, and then filled with a cold. Translated voice. "Human facility," the alien authority said. "You have 60 minutes. Return the rejected albino hatchling." In the hallway, someone shouted, "Why should we die for that thing?" Another voice answered, "Because we're human." Patel's jaw tightened. 60 minutes, he repeated, looking at Mason like this was all Mason's fault. Mason's hands curled into fists. "We don't return it," he said. "We protect." "It protected?" The guard scoffed. "For a creature their own kind threw away?" The hatchling flinched at the raised voice. Mason stepped in front of it without thinking. "Hey," he whispered. "I'm here." The hatchling's breathing slowed. Patel exhaled slowly. "Briefing room now. We decide together." They moved through dim corridors. People gathered: engineers, medics, miners, security. The main screen switched to an external feed. The alien officer appeared again, calm and sharp, armor plates catching pale light. Behind the officer stood tall shapes, silent. Patel spoke first. "This is a civilian station. We are not your enemy." The officer did not blink. "You are interfering. Return it." Reyes stepped forward. "It was abandoned. That is not law." "Is unfit?" the officer replied. "It must not exist." Mason stepped closer to the camera. "My name is Mason Hale," he said. "I'm a driver. Nobody important. But it was alive when I found it. And it's alive now." The officer's gaze fixed on him. "Human driver," it said. "Your emotion is irrelevant." Then the side door opened. Reyes entered, guiding the hatchling on unsteady legs. The small dragon looked around at the hard faces. It hesitated, trembling. Then it saw Mason. It crossed the floor and pressed its head against his knee. Like it had chosen him in front of everyone. Silence hit the room. On the screen, the officer's eyes widened just slightly. A second figure leaned close and spoke in a fast alien tongue. The translator caught one soft English word, key. Mason felt the hatchling's warmth against his leg and knew the fight had just begun. The word key hung in the room. Mason felt the hatchling press against his leg, sensing fear around it. People stared at the small white dragon, then at the screen, then back at Mason. Like he had dragged the Empire to their door, Chief Patel leaned toward the mic. "What did you key?" The alien officer's face stayed cold. "Turn it. You do not understand what you hold."
Dr. Reyes stepped forward, then explained.
"Why was it abandoned in the desert with a locator tag?"
"It is forbidden."
The officer said. A murmur rippled through the room. Forbidden meant secrets. Someone powerful wanted this hatchling gone. Patel's voice hardened. "We will not hand over a living child. It will be contained," the officer replied. "That is mercy." Mason clenched his jaw. The hatchling looked up at him, trusting, and the anger in Mason's chest became steady fire. The screen flickered. For a split second. Second emblem flashed beside the Imperial seal sharp and unfamiliar, then vanished. Reyes snapped. Rewind. An engineer froze the frame. The strange emblem sat like a stain. Patel pointed. "That is not your official?" "Mark." The officer's eyes narrowed. "You saw nothing. You have little time." The transmission cut outside. The hum deepened. The outpost walls vibrated once, as if the ship tested the shield with a slow, cruel touch. Emergency lights filled the room. Patel turned to his team. "Status. Shield is shaky," an engineer said. "Battery is dropping. Another pulse could break the net." Patel looked at Mason. "If we keep it, they can squeeze us until we fail. If we hand it over, it dies," Mason said. "And we prove humans trade lives for safety." Reyes tapped her tablet, pulling old treaty notes. "There's a restricted category," she said. "Pale lineage, not a defect. A bloodline. A bloodline for what?" Patel asked. Reyes chose simple words. Old navigation. The Empire once followed white eyes to find a sealed route. They never shared where it leads. The hatchling gave a soft hum. Mark on its foreleg brightened once, then dimmed again, like it was fighting a leash. A security guard burst in. "Chief." He found a micro-drone in the vents. During the last pulse, Patel's face tightened, so they can reach us without crossing the net. The guard showed a palm-sized metal insect, dead and sparking. Reyes whispered, "If that drone confirmed the hatchling is here, the second group won't wait. They won't bargain." Mason looked around the room. "Then we move now." "Where?" Patel asked. "The storm is still active. Under us," Mason said, pointing at the mind map. "Old service tunnels. They lead to the canyon run. My truck can reach the Farcom Tower if we stay low." An engineer shook his head. "The Cum Tower is outside the outpost shield." "Good," Mason said. "Inside the outpost, they can jam us. Outside, we have one chance to send a clean message to human command." Patel held Mason's gaze for a long second, then he nodded. "Reyes goes with you. 2 guards. Quiet." Reyes knelt beside the hatchling. "Can you hide the tag while we move?" she asked. The hatchling blinked, then pressed a claw over the glowing mark and hummed. The light faded until it was almost invisible. Reyes checked her scanner. Signal drop, she whispered. It's doing it. They moved through a service. Hatch into narrow tunnels. Dust clung to their boots. Mason carried the hatchling again, feeling its small heartbeat against his arm. Behind them, the outpost lights flickered. At the tunnel exit, wind howled through stone cracks. Mason pulled his mask down and stepped into the canyon. The walls gave cover, but the sky still felt watched. They reached the truck. Mason started. The engine ready to run. Then the hatchling lifted its head. Its eyes glowed brighter than before, not with fear like remembering. A thin line of light rose from its chest and drew shapes in the air. Stars, paths, and a single bright point that pulsed like a heartbeat. Rhea stared. And the bright point was tagged in old human coordinates Earth. Asterisk. Mason stared at the floating star map as if the storm had painted it. A bright point blinked in the air. Reyes checked her tablet and went still. These are human coordinates, she said. Earth. The light map trembled, then faded like breath on glass. The hatchling sagged the moment it stopped, exhausted. Mason wrapped the jacket tighter around it. Reyes touched her earpiece. Chief Patel. It projected a map. It points to Earth. Patel's voice came back, tense. Get to the Farcom Tower. Send a burst to command now. Mason started the truck and rolled deeper through the canyon, keeping rock walls between them and the sky. 2 security vehicles followed, lights off. The storm still roared above, but down here it sounded distant, like something huge waiting. The Com Tower rose at the edge of the mining zone, an ugly metal spine outside the outpost net. Mason parked behind its base, the guards spread out. Scanning the ridges, Reyes plugged a portable uplink into the tower panel. Come on, she muttered, fingers moving fast. The hatchling lifted its head, sensing open air. Its foreleg mark flickered. Mason covered it with his palm. Hide, he whispered. The hatchling hummed. The glow dimmed. Reyes's device chirped. Clean signal, she said. You're sending priority burst. Mason did not like the word priority. It sounded loud, even when whispered. A shadow crossed the sand. Mason looked up. 2 sleek ships sliced through the storm, smaller than the Imperial vessel. Their lights were red, not white. They flew low, fast, and they did not stop at any boundary. Line? Imperial? Mason asked. Reyes checked the readout. Oh, she said. Different emissions. One guard spat into the sand. Faction. The first ship dropped a spinning object into the canyon mouth behind them. It hit, unfolded, and blinked. A jammer. Reyes's uplink beeped, then wind. The signal bar fell. No, Reyes snapped. No, I already sent, she said, forcing her voice steady. But I don't know if it got through. The air vibrated with a new hum. Outspeakers crackled with harsh alien speech. Reyes's translator caught fragments, erased the anomaly. Forbidden line, no witnesses. Mason's stomach dropped. They don't want it returned, he said. They want it gone. The hatchling pressed against his chest. Its eyes tracked the ships like it understood. A search beam swept the sand, and the hatchling's mark flared hot under Mason's palm. Hide it, Mason whispered again. The hatchling tried. The glow dimmed, then snapped bright, stronger, like the tag was winning. Reyes scanned it. The locator's forcing a distress ping, she said. It's overriding the hatchling. Mason's mind raced. Then we break the tag. Reyes grabbed his wrist. If we cut wrong, it could scream a full signal. Another beam swept closer. Wind shoved sand in sharp waves, and the guards tightened their circle. One fired a flare upward nod at the ships, just a call for help. The red burn vanished into the storm. Reyes's cum crackled. A calm human voice answered through static. This is human command. Transmit. Reyes spoke fast. We have a live albino dragon hatchling. It is tagged. It projected a star map. Map points to Earth. Repeat. Earth. A short pause. Understood. Do not surrender the hatchling. Evacuate to the coordinates we are sending now. Numbers flashed on Reyes's screen. Deep canyon coordinates. Older tunnels. Mason nodded once. We move. Overhead, the faction ship screamed past and dropped more spinning devices. The canyon filled with blinking metal teeth. The uplink died with a final squeal. Reyes shouted, "They're sealing the exits." Mason looked ahead. The canyon narrowed into darkness. Behind them, red lights grew closer. From the tunnel mouth came a cold draft that smelled of old stone and metal. Mason remembered the map point and felt sudden fear. Why Earth? Lifted one claw and traced a tiny circle of light on Mason's sleeve like a warning. Somewhere deep below, a low thump answered. Slow and ancient in response, he held the hatchling tighter and ran into the tunnel mouth as the storm swallowed. The cum tower and the hunters followed. The tunnel swallowed them in darkness. Mason's boots scraped old metal stairs. The air was colder here, dry and still, like the storm could not reach. Reyes ran beside him with her tablet glowing. 2 guards followed, weapons up, breathing hard. Behind them, red searchlights painted the tunnel mouth. They're coming in, one guard whispered. Reyes tapped her screen. This path was built before the outpost, she said. Old human survey route. It should connect to the deep canyon node. Mason shifted the hatchling in his arms. The little dragon was shaking again, but not from cold. Its eyes glowed faintly, and it kept turning its head as if it heard something far below. A slow thump pulsed through the tunnel floor. Thump, like a giant heart. Mason swallowed. That's not the storm. Reyes nodded, face pale. No, that's inside the rock. They reached a rusted door with a manual wheel. Ow. One guard spun it. The door groaned open, releasing a breath of air that smelled like dust and old electricity. Beyond it, the tunnel widened into a long chamber lined with broken equipment. Reyes lifted her scanner. Radiation is low, she said. But there's activity. The hatchling raised its head and hummed. The mark on its foreleg flared brighter than it had before. Even under Mason's palm, it was being pulled by something. Hide it, Mason whispered. The hatchling tried. The glow dimmed for half a second, then snapped back. Stronger, like an invisible hand grabbed the tag and yanked. Reyes cursed softly. The locator isn't just tracking, it's sinking. What does that mean? Mason asked. Reyes stared at the numbers on her screen. It means the tag is waking something up. The thump became clearer. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. 3 beats. Pause. 1 beat. Pause. A signal. They moved deeper into the chamber. At the far end, a wall of stone was carved with lines that did not look human or dragon. They looked older, too precise to clean. In the center was a sealed circle, like a door with no handle. A door in the rock. Mason stopped. The hatchling stared at it like it was staring at the sun. Reyes whispered, "This matches the map pattern." One guard shone a light over the carvings. "Why is this on a mining world?" "Because it was hidden," Reyes said, "and because someone wanted it forgotten." The floor VIB. Arrayed outside the chamber. Footsteps echoed. Not human boots. Too light, too fast. Metal scraping on stone. The faction hunters had entered the tunnels. One guard raised his weapon. "We hold them here." Patel's voice burst through Reyes's cum in broken static. "Reyes, hail report." Reyes spoke fast. "We found the site. It's active. The tag is syncing to something down here." Patel's voice cracked. "Imperial ship is moving closer. They're arguing with the red ships." 2 groups. Mason blinked. "They're fighting over it," as Patel said, "and both will crush us if they have to." Reyes lowered the cum and looked at the door. "Mason, I think the hatchling is the key." Mason held the hatchling closer. "It's a baby. It's a bloodline," Reyes said. "And the Empire feared it enough to abandon it. Not because it was weak, but because it could unlock." The hatchling suddenly wriggled free from Mason's arms and dropped to the ground. Mason reached for it, but it moved faster than he expected, straight toward the sealed circle. "No." Mason hissed, The hatchling placed both claws on the door. Its eyes flared bright white blue. The mark on its foreleg erupted into light. A thin beam shot from the mark into the circle, and the carvings around the door lit up like veins. The chamber, lifted into the air, floating. Then the circle answered. A line of light formed around it, perfectly smooth, like the edge of a blade. The rock did not crack. It separated. The door began to open. A cold wind poured through, not like desert wind, like space. It carried a sound that was not sound, a pressure that made Mason's ears ring. Reyes stumbled back. That's not a normal chamber. The guard near the tunnel entrance shouted, "Contact!" Red lights flashed in the passage. Shapes moved, sleek armor, narrow helmets, weapons that glowed. Faction hunters stepped into view. Behind them, a deeper shadow moved, and a second set of lights appeared, white and steady. Imperial soldiers. Two enemy forces met in the tunnel, both looking past the humans.
Ash!
Straight at the hatchling and the opening door. The hatchling turned its head, scared. The door widened, wind pulling at its scales. Mason ran forward and grabbed the hatchling. Lifting it away from the circle, the light on the door flickered. The opening slowed, shaking like it could collapse or explode, and the Imperial officer's voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and urgent now, no longer calm. "Human driver," it said, "move away. You do not know what you are opening." Mason held the hatchling to his chest, standing between two armies and a door that shouldn't exist, and knew the next choice would decide more than one world. The chamber felt like it was holding its breath. The door in the rock was half open now, a perfect circle of cold light. Wind poured through it, pulling dust into slow spirals. The air tasted thin, like the edge of space. Mason stood in the center of it all, holding the albino hatchling against his chest. In the tunnel, the faction hunters raised their weapons. Their lights were red, sharp, impatient. Behind them, Imperial soldiers held a cleaner line, white lights, steady steps, armor marked with the Empire's seal. Two forces, one target. The Imperial officer stepped forward, voice amplified by a translator. "Human driver, put the hatchling down." Back away from the door, a faction hunter laughed. The sound warped. "They abandoned it," he said. "Now they pretend it matters." Reyes moved to Mason's side, hands open. "Oh, nobody fires," she warned, even though her voice trembled. "This place is active." The hatchling shook, claws gripping Mason's jacket. Its foreleg mark pulsed hot again, like it was trying to connect to the door. Mason lowered his head near the hatchling's ear. "Listen," he whispered, simple words, steady tone. "You are not alone, or you are safe with me." The hatchling's breathing slowed for 1 second, then the door reacted. The circle of light brightened. The carvings around it flared like veins. A low thump rolled through the chamber, stronger now, like something waking fully. The Imperial officer's eyes narrowed. "It is responding to the bloodline." Reyes swallowed. "So the map? Earth. It wasn't random." The faction hunter snapped. "Enough. Kill it." A red weapon lifted. Mason moved without thinking. He stepped forward, placing his own body between the hatchling and the weapons. "No," he said. Loud, clear. "You don't get to erase a life because it scares you." The faction hunter's finger tightened. A sudden wrist crack echoed. Not a gunshot. The tunnel ceiling above the faction line flashed. A white beam cut across their jammer device, slicing it clean. Sparks rained. The Imperial soldiers had fired not at humans, but at the faction tech. The faction leader hissed. "Traitors." The two alien groups turned on each other for a heartbeat. Weapons shifting. Tension spiked like a wire about to snap. Reyes grabbed Mason's arm. "They fight here, the door could destabilize." Mason looked at the door. The wind was pulling harder now, tugging at loose fabric, tugging at the hatchling's scales. The hatchling's eyes were wide, torn between fear and pull. Then it did something Mason did not expect. It reached up, touched Mason's chest with one small claw, and made that soft hum again, steady, gentle. The locator mark dimmed, Not forced this time. Chosen. Reyes stared at her scanner. It's overriding the tag. The hatchling turned its face toward the opening door and let out a thin sound, not a scream, more like a word spoken without language. The door's light softened. The thumping slowed. The wind eased. The door was listening to the hatchling's emotions. Mason understood then. The key wasn't the mark. It wasn't the tag. It was the hatchling's choice. He knelt. Slowly, keeping his hands visible to both armies. You can decide, he whispered to the hatchling. Not them, you. The Imperial officer stepped forward again, voice tight. That door is an ancient root. If it opens fully, it could call things that ended worlds. The Empire sealed it. For a reason, Reyes shot back. Or you sealed it to control it. The officer did not deny it. Return the hatchling. We will contain it. The faction hunter snarled, we will destroy it. Mason looked from one side to the other, then down at the hatchling. I'm not giving you to either of them, he said quietly. The hatchling's eyes met his. In them, Mason saw fear, but also trust. It leaned closer, pressing its forehead against his collarbone, then turned toward the door. It stretched one claw toward the light, and instead of opening it further, it traced a small circle in the air, the same shape it had drawn on Mason's sleeve before. Warning. The door answered by shrinking slightly like it could close. Reyes whispered, it can control it. Mason exhaled. Then we make a third option. I stood, still holding the hatchling. This ends now, he said, voice steady. Humans will escort it to Earth's under human protection, and you will back away. Both alien groups reacted at once. The Imperial officer's eyes flashed. Earth is not part of your authority. Mason lifted his chin. It is our home. The faction hunter raised his weapon again. Then we kill you all. Before anyone could fire, the hatchling made a stronger hum, still not loud but full of command. The door's light surged outward like a wave, not a blast, a barrier, a smooth, invisible wall formed between Mason and the armies. Weapons struck it and stopped, humming in the air as if held by strong hands. Every soldier froze. The Imperial officer whispered one word, almost respectful now, awakened. Rhea stared in shock. It's not weak, she breathed. It was never weak. Mason held the hatchling tighter. You were rejected because you were dangerous, he whispered. Not to humans, to their control. The hatchling's eyes softened. The barrier remained steady. In the tunnel, alarms began to sound. Human comes returning now that the jammers were cut. Patel's voice burst through Reyes' earpiece. Clear. Reyes' command confirmed extraction and bound. Hold position. We're taking you home, he said. The hatchling blinked slowly, then pressed its head against Mason's shoulder against answer. Behind the barrier, the two alien forces stood helpless, watching as their property became something else entirely, a choice they could not control. And as human rescue lights approached through the tunnels, the ancient door's circle dimmed, not as a threat, but as a promise. The hatchling had made its first decision. Not empire, not fear. A human driver in a new future.